Hello, my name is Michael Nemeth. Today is Thursday, November 5th, and this is my persuasive speech for Speech 205. According to John Kent, a professor of business and legal policy at the University of Illinois, the total social cost of gambling each year are about $80 billion. Studies led by Kent at the university found that states pay on average about $3 in cost for every $1 gambling raises for each state, due to crime, poverty, and ruined families. I watch a lot of sports and enjoy going to events, and with my knowledge of teams and players, I feel I could do well betting on sports. I've done prior research on this topic to determine whether or not I should gamble on sports. Many of you or someone that you know has gambled on sports in the past. You may have a hot tip on the game this weekend, and you feel you can make a quick buck, but you have also seen what it can do to others, so what should you do? Gambling on sports can take the legitimacy out of sports, have substantial social costs, and send the wrong message to young athletes. We need to take a stand and make some changes. To start off, I will discuss the problem, gambling on sports. I will cover how gambling affects sports, the individual, and the young athlete. Then I will talk about potential solutions to gambling on sports. This will entail a complete outline, opening of help centers, and teaching young athletes about the game, not the money. Let's discuss the threat that gambling is to the legitimacy of sports and society. Gambling has been linked to many scandals in the history of professional sports. Let's take a look at a few examples to see how. In 1919, the Chicago White Sox were defeated by the Cincinnati Reds in the World Series. They were clearly the best team in the major leagues and were the hands-on favorite to win the series. So what happened, you ask? Chicago players had gotten fed up with their cheap owner, Charles Comiskey's actions. Many of them were in dire need of cash. So a few players came up with an idea. They sought out gamblers Joseph Sport Sullivan and Sleepy Bill Burns. A promised amount of $100,000 was agreed upon to be paid to the players, and the Chicago White Sox threw the World Series. Here you see 8 players that were charged in the event. Another example is the 1951 point shaving scandal. This was not just one team, though. Between 1947 and 1951, at least 86 games were fixed, and 20 players were indicted on charges and convicted. The scandal involved throwing games, bribing officials, and the main option of point shaving, which involved scoring fewer points to prevent a team from covering the spread. This picture shows a player involved, Connie Hawkins, and his bookie, Joseph Hacken. Jeff Marone from ESPN has an article where he lists some of the biggest scandals in history. Pete Rose bet on his own team when he was a manager. 13 players were suspended from Boston College after betting against their own team, and the list goes on. These scandals and other sports wagering has resulted in players banned from sports, which causes a loss of income and career, loss of integrity for sports. Nobody wants to take part in a sporting event in which the athletes are clearly not trying their hardest and the games are not fair, and a damaged status for the sports and their athletes, which causes scarred reputations. Pete Rose is a good example. According to Baseball Almanac, he is the all-time Major League Baseball leader in hits, games played, at-bats, and singles. A player of his caliber would easily be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, but because he gambled on his team in his post-playing career, he was banned from baseball for life. Here we see him with 2 of his betting documents. The MLB commissioner at the time, A. Bartlett Giamatti, had this to say: "The matter of Mr. Rose is now closed. Let no one think it did not hurt baseball." Both the American Academy of Pediatrics and the National Gambling Impact Study Commission have indicated that betting on sports can lead to gambling elsewhere and also lead to gambling compulsively. Schaefer and LaPlante stated that excessive gambling results in psychosomatic outcomes such as reduced mental health, deprived social relationships, and poor financial situations. They also found that about 90% of addicted gamblers are forced to be involved in criminal activity in order to pay off debt. Gambling takes the value out of sports. Sports are a great method for teaching teamwork and striving for goals. The public can receive a large amount of entertainment from involvement in sports. Sporting events are great times for fellowship and brotherhood. Teams can also generate large revenues. However, when gambling is thrown into the mix, everything goes out the window. Professional athletes throwing games and the average Joe losing his savings on the big game, gambling has an adverse effect on society. It redirects the focus to the dollar for personal gain, which sports can be so much more. Little Jimmy down the road loves to play football. He truly loves the game. As he grows up, though, he will be exposed to others gambling on the outcomes of games. Rather than simply loving the games for what they are, people have become greedy and only want to make a quick buck. This is not the right message to send to young athletes. Now let's discuss the solution to sports wagering. On October 28, 1992, as we see here, President George H.W. Bush signed the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. This act prohibits the government or citizens to operate a gambling organization based on a sporting event that pro athletes take part in. 4 states, Delaware, Montana, Nevada, and Oregon, have managed to legalize gambling on sports. The first step to stopping this problem would be to reinstate the ban in all states. Online sports betting is also a major threat, as it has reached an all-time high and is also hard to track. Nowadays, people are gambling on fantasy sports. Sites like DraftKings and FanDuel allow you to wager money on how well an assembled team of players do each week. The problem with this, however, is that very few people are actually profiting. As you see here in a study done by the Sports Business Journal, in the first half of Major League Fantasy Baseball, 91% of profits were earned by only 1.3% of those who played. One can argue that it is alright to do as we desire, but too many people are losing large amount of money wagering on how well players do and teams perform. These sites need to be shut down in order to fix the issue at hand. Too many people have become addicted and had their lives destroyed. We need to help them. Here we see a chart of compulsive gambling and recovery. I've proposed a 3-step help center based on this. Step 1 would be an awareness center where people can learn about sports, gambling, and how gambling on sports can affect your life. Step 2, you would have an addiction center where people can come to terms with their addictions and tell their stories to someone who cares. Those who are troubled can receive the help they need. Step 3 would be a rehab facility where you can get the help you need to reestablish your lives and families. I also propose youth-specific learning centers. Young minds do not always realize the full picture and may not be able to stop themselves from compulsive gambling. Young athletes would be able to go here and learn to love sports and learn restraint. Athletes such as Pete Rose would make appearances and teach the youth about not getting caught up in the money. Playful sports is a useful learning tool for the youth of society, and adolescents and young adults do not need to learn that money is the root of the game. To review, gambling on sports diminishes the value of the game, has negative effects on society, and sends the wrong message to young athletes. We need to make a stand to stop gambling on sports, to help those who have suffered, and to provide instruction to the younger generation. The cost of betting on sports are far too much to ignore. While you may win big, the odds are not in your favor. Gambling will continue to ruin athletes in their respective sports. It has caused devastation in lives, from bankruptcy to addiction. It also puts the emphasis of sports on money. Do not allow this evil to ruin the great sports culture we have and the nation we live in. Remember Proverbs 13:11. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase.